Hello and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode. Today, I have a guest. Oh my goodness. Cathryn finally got her shit together and booked a guest. You know her, you love her. She is the creator of Basketball Feelings and some of the best writing in the NBA. It's Katie Heindl.
Hi, my friend.
Hi.
Welcome to the summer pod. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the summer pod. Yes. Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So much has happened. Like almost too much has happened in the last week or so in the NBA. Like sometimes I'm just like, can someone tell the NBA they don't have to go this hard?
Yeah.
With the drama. Like it, you know, a little bit of space between the NBA finals and the draft. It's like, did the OKC parade happen on draft day? Like or was it like the day before? Because I was seeing all these parade highlights.
I think it was the yesterday, day before, but this is how the internet warps your brain.
Right. Yeah. Where I'm just like, this is crazy. The lack of, I mean, I get like next week it's, you know, it's like Canada Day and then the US holiday and stuff. So anyway, it is what it is. But we're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about our new boy. What's his name? Collin Murray Boyles. We're going to talk about all the reactions around him. Did you see CMB?
CMB. That's what people are calling him. But like, we need a better nickname for this boy. Young man.
Yeah. CM Buckets? No, that's stupid.
TBD.
I hate it. I hate it. I wish I could take it back. But first, we got to talk about, you know, the last bit of this NBA finals here. It was a thrilling 7 games. No one predicted it. Game 7 was probably one of the more heartbreaking games we've seen in a while, with Tyrese Haliburton going down in the first quarter with a torn Achilles. I mean, it was crazy how much it was the exact scenario as Kevin Durant when in 2019 when he had the calf injury and he was like, I can play, and then tore his Achilles, and like the slow motion of like the pop that you could see in the back of his calf, it was like identical. And it was just such a shame because we've learned from the Kevin Durant situation, you know, everyone knew it was a risk, but then Tyrese Haliburton, I remember ahead of game 6 was like, I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't play. And then he looks great in game 6 and we think like, okay, like he's good. And then it happens. It's this weird thing where I feel like I can't blame him, obviously, right? I mean, it's game 7 of the finals. Like, you're not going to not play, but it's just super unfortunate. Because I remember years ago, back when the Jalen and Jacoby podcast existed, Jalen Rose was kind of making the point, not about a player in particular, but just that sometimes you have to save a player from themselves. And he talked about himself, about how he had this like hand injury and he kept playing, and then he like permanently damaged like nerve endings in his hand. And this situation just started getting me thinking that like, is this a situation where you do need to save a player from themselves, or are you just like, forget it, who cares about next season? Well, not who cares, but you just got to go for it.
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting, I guess, ethical question. And also apologies for when you were introing this very sensitive segment and I was clapping at my dog biting his nails. I'm not insensitive.
Aww, that's okay. Listen, everyone over the last few months has put up with my dog Zelda in many different ways. So
yeah, but she's pretty cute.
She is. Thank you.
No, it's an interesting ethical question, one which I feel like sports, what do you want to say, like commentary, fandom, the whole entire ecosystem is not necessarily, I don't want to say ready for, but just like it's a difficult bridge to cross, right? Because for Haliburton's sake, like we understand that calf strain specifically, right, can be indicative of an Achilles injury, right? That is usually something that can come before one. As random as like an Achilles injury does seem. So like he had that, right? There's like a certain amount of wear and tear. Obviously he's cleared. And like, I've written about injuries before, and I've spoken with sports scientists and doctors. And like the one thing they do kind of land on is if an athlete feels good, like to basically like let the athlete be the driver,
Right.
if they feel
Sure.
good and they're like, no, I can play, I want to play. It is often better to let them play or compete or do the sport that they do. And if they're like, no, this feels weird, even if like everything looks okay, to again, like kind of let the athlete lead. And it's usually injuries that come when the opposite happens, basically.
Right.
So,
Right.
but like, yeah, something like this, to your point, when there's a calf strain, and in the case of like this is like they've played such a long season already, the game 7, so like the longest possible finals you could have was a long playoffs for them. It's just like the repetitions, right, on top of all of that, and you're going into a game that's like going to be really hard. There's going to be a lot of cutting, there's going to be a lot of like pivots and just things that generally put pressure on and cause that Achilles muscle and the leg to just, I don't know, you're really giving it a beating. So is this a scenario where he plays pretty well through, because he went down pretty early also? Because I was going to say, is this a situation where you say like, okay, we'll pull you out when you start to look fatigued, or maybe like we'll let you play through the first quarter really lightly and you can see how it goes, again knowing you're sort of running a risk. But yeah, it's
because he looked great before it happened.
He did look great,
right? That's the hard part. And
yeah.
same with Durant in 2019. He
Yeah.
was playing out of his mind before it happened.
Tatum
So,
too. Yeah, like this has been a really terrible playoffs for Achilles injuries specifically.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, with Damian Lillard, I recall he was injured.
Mm-hmm.
And then
he had a strain too, I think. Yeah.
Was it a calf strain? I apologize, everyone. I'm blanking on what his specific injury was.
Yeah.
But he was trying to play injured, made it worse. Tatum, not so much. Tatum, it was more of kind of like a freak injury.
Yes. Yeah.
But then Haliburton was also trying to play through an injuries that you would figure if it were a regular season, they're not going to play through.
Yeah, they'd shut you down for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I'm not sitting here saying I don't think Haliburton should have played, because it's easy for me to get on this microphone days later and say something like that. I'm not in their locker room. I don't have the adrenaline going through my body leading into that game. Like I'm not here to say that. It's just, for me, it's an interesting conversation to have, because now it's like we're not going to see Haliburton play until fall 2026. And do you save a player from themselves? Like, I agree. Like, I actually agree with you when you say it should be the player's decision. I completely agree with that. But hearing another player say, like, someone should have stopped me from playing that day is interesting to me. And it's not for someone like myself or complete outsiders to decide. It's just an interesting philosophical conversation that I wanted to put out there. Obviously, would love to know what the listeners think. And maybe it's a greater conversation that the NBA should be having with their doctors and players and other people like.
Yeah. I mean, I think the slippery slope is then the what ifs, right? Because it's like, okay,
of course, yeah,
they lost. So it's not like he helped them win the title. So if he sat and they were still going to lose, right? Then do you at least look at having him next season, and then you make, you run everything back, and you kind of make another run at this thing, as difficult as even that can be. Like, that's something that I think is probably going through a lot of people's heads now. Like within the Pacers organization, probably Haliburton himself. This is the sort of thing, like, it's impossible to ask these guys and
not to play
the team in the moment. No, I was going to say just like to ask that question, to the what ifs question. But that's kind of where this has to be almost informed from, like, to ask them those tough things of like, do you wish someone had stopped you? Because I think, like, some people might just say like, yeah, for sure, obviously I got hurt. But then others and I feel like Haliburton's fairly like intuitive and touch person. He might be like, no, like I saw the shot to try and help my team win a title.
Mhm.
You know, he is fairly young. He hasn't been injured like this before, but I mean, Achilles, they're a big thing. They're like a really hard and difficult thing to come back from. And I think then the question is like, does someone come back the same? Right? Like
Mhm.
how else like will things be sort of impacted? Which again, like all this is a compounding factor. So I think maybe I do fall on the side of someone should be able to veto in specific
Yeah.
instances where you kind of almost have to have like this running checklist of things, right? Where it's like, is there another existing injury? Is it a fatiguing kind of strain or an injury like that? Like, is there probable reason to think like playing on this and maybe putting some like shifting weight wrong or like impact or something like that would be enough to cause a rupture or a tear? You know, if the answer to those questions are yeah, and it's not just like, well, it's a freak accident and sometimes these things happen in sports, then I think
Mhm.
there should be someone to say like, yeah, we're going to shut you down. Like you're too valuable to us as a team and a collective, and we want to come back and compete next season, you know?
Yeah, like there's
Yeah.
more than just
It's
now.
tricky. It's very tricky.
Yeah, maybe it depends on the injury and things like that. Like, with if we know that this type of calf injury, if continue to play on, can and has led to Achilles injuries. Maybe there's like certain injuries that are treated differently. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously I don't know, but yeah, it's just such a shame. Like I was screaming no at the TV. Like
Yeah.
I
It was
was so
awful.
genuinely upset, and like
Yeah.
it's not even like my team necessarily, because it's just like it's the last thing you want to see. And it just got me thinking about that Jalen Rose quote.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe like it's not something Haliburton would say today, but maybe, one day, like at the end of his career or something like that, when he's asked to reflect on it, maybe it'll be like yeah, I shouldn't have played. Because if
Yeah.
it's an injury where it's like you're not going to play a regular season game,
Mhm.
then you have to really ask yourself, what's the difference in terms of like your physical body, not just the stakes in front of you.
Mhm.
But
And I think,
anyway.
yeah, no, and I think that's where like the data, like kind of gathering this data um, from firsthand, like experience from firsthand from athletes is difficult because likely the majority of them aren't going to want to talk about this kind of stuff until their career is in the
Mm,
rearview mirror, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because of
very
other
true.
pressures, right? Other pressures of like, oh, like I don't want to appear to be not a competitor and like not, incredibly tough and all this other kind of like, I don't know, frankly, BS sometimes when it comes to
Yeah,
someone's health and well being. But yeah, it would be very difficult to sort of get the truth when someone is still quite close to things.
yeah. Um, on the flip side, I mean, we obviously got to talk about OKC.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations to them. They were the favorite the entire time. They stayed that way. They won it all. Maybe it took them a little longer than people anticipated, but I think that speaks more to how great the Pacers are,
Mm-hmm.
than any sort of failure on the OKC side. I mean, everyone's talked about how this team is really, really poised to continue to win in the future. They're so young that Jalen Williams said it was his first alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, didn't Caruso have to like open the champagne
Yeah,
for
Caruso
him?
had to show them how to open the champagne. They didn't know how to open
I mean, they're also Gen Z.
champagne.
I feel like they're not drinking, They're not, they
What
don't
are they
drink.
doing then?
I don't know. Maybe they vape sometimes. I don't know what they're
I
doing.
feel like Gen Zs do drink though.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Okay, now we sound so old.
I know. We're like,
Now,
what do
like
you mean
now,
you're not getting
I couldn't
drunk?
even sound older if I tried.
Yeah, we could though. We
No,
could.
I've been at stand-up shows with, people are drinking and they're Gen Zs.
Maybe Gen Z athletes don't drink as much. I mean, they're
I
like
think it's just I think this is a
microdosing.
specific OKC
They're
thing, and
maybe.
we made it about ourselves and our distance from our
No, I
youth, but
feel
it's
like
fine.
there's a lot of Gen Z people who aren't like partying in that way, or they're partying in different ways that we don't know about.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Um, I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. I
But
thought
that
it
was
was
very
they did
cute.
not know how it was cute. It was kind of annoying. I don't know why I felt annoyed by it, but I was like, what do you mean? You don't know how to open a bottle of champagne. Like, no one taught me how to open a bottle of champagne. I mean, you look at it and you kind of just figure it out.
Yeah, it's hit or miss. Yeah.
It's not like it's not that hard. Like, it just, like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes certain people are just like, they look at something and they're just like, oh, I don't know. Like, it just kind of gave me that vibe more than just like I'm a baby. Like, I don't know.
It's cute though.
Yeah, it was adorable. Sure. Love seeing SGA win. Love seeing his MVP. I like that his season is cemented as one of the great individual seasons ever, and that him winning the championship kind of solidifies the fact that no one can take that away from him, no matter what happens. You know, it's like he will always have this season. It will never be a disputed MVP. Like, you might get some, loser years from now that's like, no, it should have been Jokic. And it's like, yeah, Jokic is great. And he had a phenomenal regular season. But when you look at how this whole thing played out, you can't really deny that this was Shea's year. I don't even think Jokic would deny that at this point. He'll be with his horses. And if you go to Serbia and you ask him, he'll be like, yeah, I'm happy for Shea. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really happy for him to have that. I've talked about Hamilton having a statue for him someday. It's more about where do we place the statue. I think that's the only conversation now. And maybe what's the pose. A part of me thinks it'd be so cool if it was just like he has his jersey, but he also just has like a fur coat on.
Kind of needs a fur coat. Yeah.
You're right. I just feel like he needs a fur, like the statue needs a fur coat.
Yeah. Something like draping over his shoulders for sure.
Because future generations need to sense the cool factor of this guy.
Yeah.
It can't just be like, oh, he was a great basketball player, because all that's true, but he has such a vibe.
He does. I think like the thing about the OKC team to me and why I think they're maybe a bit scary or why they're only going to get better is because they know now like exactly what it was that they didn't have in the playoffs, which was, as much depth in this case as Indiana. So they can just go out and get that really. And they can kind of work on it in terms of like the rotations of who they have and sort of like where they're going to fit everybody. And then they can just sort of try and do this again, which for some reason, like every season, I think like how hard that is and how unrealistic it is that a team is able to run it back. Like look at the Celtics.
Yeah.
This year, so many people thought like that's a sure thing. It's almost inevitable. Not me, but a lot of people thought that. And I think with OKC, I kind of do think that just because
they're so young.
They're so young. Everything did break right for them, but then when they like some things also didn't throughout the playoffs, like they were challenged. Like Indiana really pushed them, and I think to face that sort of adversity, that's why Indiana got so good in the playoffs, because they had that almost every single round. OKC didn't necessarily.
Just with Denver.
Yeah, with Denver, and then in the finals, but you kind of take all of that away. You go like have an off season, a very short off season, and then you come back and you're like, all right, now we know how that goes. We know the rhythm of it. We know like the conditioning aspect of it, what it takes to get to that many games in a season. And I think they're pretty much going to keep everybody, right? Like they're one of like, not to become salary brained, but like they do have one of the lowest, I think, overheads in the NBA. They just drafted a ton of people because they have still 1 million draft picks. Things are like looking pretty like good there. It looks like they heard these dynasties are over conversations and we're just like, JK, we have fun.
I mean, I hope dynasties aren't over, because I actually feel dynasties are good and possibly better for the NBA. Dynasties are what grew the NBA, right? I mean, anyway, I could go on about that, but I do agree with you. I also think too the Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso trade,
what a great
probably
trade.
one of the best trades of the decade.
Yeah,
what I mean? Like really, like Alex Caruso was such a difference maker for this team. He also became their championship experience which without him they wouldn't have had anywhere on their roster. Which I'm big on having some kind of championship DNA on your team. I think that's really important. And yeah, that trade has been absolutely phenomenal. The Hartenstein.
I think it's Steen. Yeah.
Okay, so I got it right the first time.
Or is it Stein?
I've heard both. I just keep hearing his
like
name
on the broadcast. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear his name in such a tomato way that it's like, all right. Anyways, his signing I thought was very pivotal as well. We all thought that was a great signing at the time. That really paid off. Those were like the only major differences they made from last year to this year. And I really like that about this team because, you know, they didn't like quote unquote panic. They weren't, you know what I mean? I just feel like when teams don't reach a certain threshold, everyone panics and they get into this like you got to blow it up scenario, and that just never happened with them, and I'm really happy for that. And I also think yes, they could just run this back fully. I think too, like with, you make a great point with Boston. I feel like with Boston, and you know, they've made some trades recently, but like they can't keep relying on Al Horford the way that they have. You know, he's getting older. You know, it's a team that has a lot of question marks still, despite making some recent moves.
Yeah, and like Tatum is out next season, so I think like the East is fairly, you know, it's good for the Raptors, but like the East is fairly open, I would say.
Is it good for the this isn't on our docket, but is it good for the Raptors? Because I feel like we weren't going to jump into a Raptors Homer moment, but I feel like we're here, so maybe this is just like a bonus Homer moment. Okay. Oh, new segment, bonus Homer moment. Love that. So bonus Homer moment. I feel once again confused about the direction the Raptors are going in.
Because of the draft?
Not because of the draft per se, but I feel like last year felt like, you know, it was a full commitment to a rebuild. Last season I did not feel this way. You know, we committed to a rebuild. Okay, then we made the Brandon Ingram trade.
Yeah, a little confusing. Yeah,
which is a bit confusing. And then our CMB pick. I'm just gonna run with CMB. Not that I can't say Collin Murray Boyles, but we're just gonna say CMB. He looks like an interesting player. They've been, you know, every draft player has a comp. They've been comparing him to Draymond Green, or that he's a Draymond Green style player, which is fine. I mean, that's fine if he's even like a Lou Dort style player, you know, but the question remains is like, this team doesn't have a lot of shooting. And now we still don't have a lot of shooting. Not that I thought a number 9 draft pick was going to like make or break our whole team, but it feels like there's a lot more moves to be made. Even if we don't get like some sort of blockbuster, you know, the Giannis conversations have quieted down significantly. The Kevin Durant trade has happened. You know, I don't know if these big star names are out there, but like on paper, the team doesn't really make sense as of, you know, today, June 26th, 2025. And I'm confused as to where they're going to at least try to take this team into next year, because I feel like we are where we were before. Like we're not necessarily better than we were a year ago.
I think the Ingram thing to me kind of is representative of like almost a bad old habit. Maybe I don't want to say bad habit, because like TBD for how that works out, right? But it's just this idea of like sometimes capitalizing on trying to sign someone when you can versus trying to land or lure somebody to Toronto. And I also feel like fit better with the blueprint of Raptors of old. You know what I mean? Like trying to fit into like that.
Katie,
team.
thank you.
Yeah.
I had a whole thing on this show months ago where I went on a proper tangent, proper tangent about why this city continues to act like we can't land a free agent. Like, why do we keep acting like no one wants to be here?
Yeah.
And I, you know what I mean? Like this just Toronto attitude, like whatever the hell it is, of this inferiority complex. You know, I just feel like we can change this narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going on about how like marketing is a very powerful thing. The We the North campaign was a very powerful thing, and it changed the culture completely. Like there is a world where we sell players on Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting a lot of pushback on this. I really was. I got a lot of pushback, and I just, you know, I just don't agree. This is a really good city. It is one of the better markets in the NBA. People go on about the tax stuff, but they make American money.
Yeah, they do.
So you live in a land where everything is like 30 to 40% off, your house, your car, all of that. That more than makes up for the tax. I mean, it's just Katie, stop me, Katie.
I mean, cost of living crisis is real across all tax brackets, but I think, I don't know, it is at a point now where I was actually talking to our pal Jerome Chang about this on the Basketball Feelings podcast recently.
Yes.
But we were specifically talking about how, you know, I'm very curious to see how the Tempo kind of come into this market and are almost going to be the first Toronto franchise free of these sort of like fetters of like inferiority in a way, because they're not going to have it like grandfathered in. I feel like a lot of like the Raptors sort of had it grandfathered in, you know, but now there's really no reason, because I think, you know, the Raptors won a title that does count for a lot. The Tempo, like, I know people make comparisons to the Raptors because they're the first expansion team for the W, they're the first expansion team in Canada, but it really doesn't feel like they're entering the market with that same like existential, will this work, will this not work, right? Like it just seems already like such a sure thing in terms of like, obviously the fandom that's there, you know, building a team is one thing, and the competitive, like how competitive that team is off the bat is another, but like the Valkyries are really sick. I think they're like, there was a figure, I heard the figure even like today and I blanked on it, but basically they're just like the most profitable W franchise now in the league.
Yeah, they're one of the top profitable.
Yeah, so like I don't
W
think
franchises,
you know, to become like a money guy for a second, like Toronto's not far off for that, I think, when the Tempo get here. But anyway, I don't think they're gonna have that kind of like chip on their shoulder, right? That
I completely agree.
Yeah, which is
in
a good
addition
thing.
to that, women's basketball players play internationally more frequently.
Yeah.
So that's another thing too. Like they're not like, oh, I don't have a passport.
Yeah,
oh my god, exactly. I have to go through customs. What is this? But like
the customs complaint is always so funny.
They don't have that. Like they literally go through it all the time.
Yeah.
So they're not going to care about all that BS. Yeah, I mean the Golden State Valkyries have been doing tremendously well. Even as an expansion team, they're not, you know, everyone just assumed they would be like at the bottom of the stands, and they actually have a decent record.
Mm-hmm.
They're close to 500, if not at 500. Mm-hmm. And they have a very international roster as well as a coach. Like it's not like a full American kind of team. And it's interesting that they've taken such an international approach, something I got to do a bigger deep dive on. But yeah, they've been doing tremendously well. And I agree, they're not going to have the Tempo, are not going to have all of that baggage with them. But as Raptors fans, to bring it back, we got to shed all of this.
Yeah, we do. And like, I will go back to what I was saying before about next year being good for the Raptors, just because I think the East is like so up for grabs, and the teams that are sort of like a little like a few years ahead of them, like I think of a team like the Pistons, you know, it's good to rub shoulders with teams like that, right? When you are kind of no longer, you're not supposed to be in a rebuild anymore. Like this is supposed to be the team, right? This is the team that's been constructed. So what does that look like when they actually
You mean for the Pistons?
The Raptors. The Pistons, yeah, but like for the Raptors, I think.
This is supposed to be the team?
I think so. Even if you disagree with it, I think it's still like, this is the team they built. Like they signed these guys, you know?
No, they got to still be building this team. No?
I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how much, like maybe in the summer. And of course there'll be like some decisions through summer league, but those are like end of roster spots, right? It's a
So
tough.
you don't anticipate like an RJ Barrett trade or something like that?
I don't really actually, to be totally honest with you, like I never really got my head around why that seems so urgent, or I think it became urgent / a quote like sure thing or done deal when Giannis's name is in the picture, right?
Sure.
But if you take that off the table, even as like, an expectation or something that's like floated off in the distance, then why are you moving RJ Barrett?
I mean, the team is really just missing. I mean, it's missing, for lack of a better term, offensive diversity.
But then they go and draft a guy who's basically like Vision
This
6'9", 2.0.
this is my point.
Which is why I'm like,
my point.
This is either so ingrained. This is more than old habits die hard. This is so ingrained and intentional at this point that I think it's like, this isn't seen as a deficit by the front office. This is just like, this is who we're comfortable drafting, signing. This is a team we're comfortable building. They see some reason why they think it's going to work. That could be stubbornness. It could be naivety. Like it could be because they do see something that could shake out finally this season.
That's so wild to me. I really hope that isn't true. I'm not a believer in that whole everyone's 6'9" experiment. And if you were really going to continue to go down that path, like why trade Siakam, right? Like to me, Siakam is the ultimate 6'9" guy.
Sure.
He's the ultimate vision 6'9" guy. Like
I think
why would it, if you were so committed to that vision,
yeah,
it wouldn't make sense to move off of him.
I think that team fell apart for a lot of different reasons. And like some of those reasons
like I'm not like
and are still on the team. So like,
yes,
this is a game where the generationality is like such a thing that's on the forefront, right? When someone turns 25, it's like, okay, well, who do we have coming up next? Really? Right? Like 18. Granted, like that looked like a lot of BS when you watch Siakam in the playoffs this year, right? He was someone who, if the Pacers won, was probably going to win Finals MVP.
He absolutely would have won Finals MVP.
But again, like I would go back to something I've said a lot, which is I feel like sometimes those leaps, you could look at it, even OG in the playoffs this year, like those leaps don't necessarily happen until guys leave and go to a new situation, right? Where the team is built more, whether it's like cohesively around their skill set, complementary around their skill set, whether they're asked to do more, to take on more, sometimes take on less, right? To be more specific in their role. And I think that Siakam probably needed that.
Yeah, like I think I can. Yeah, like I'm happy to see Siakam in a winning situation. I wouldn't want him to stay and deal with this crazy rebuild and confusion. Like this isn't what I want for him. But I'm just saying, like if Vision 6'9" is just philosophically who like Masai and Bobby are as creators of teams in this generation, then it doesn't make sense to move off from a guy like him. And more so, I just don't agree with it. Like I just don't think it actually works. I mean, because you have players like Jokic, like Wemby, like Giannis, who are like these 7 foot, in Wemby's case 7'5", extremely versatile players. And, as great of a defender as, Draymond Green has been, there's only so much he can do against those guys.
Mm.
And we've seen that, especially with Jokic in the playoffs. Like, there's only so much he can do. And it just, maybe with certain matchups, it makes sense. But as a whole team philosophy to win a championship, I think it's a little too cute for me. I don't think it works. I don't want to relive it, and I really hope that isn't what's happening.
I will say, one, comps are like you can throw them out the window within probably 3 games, right? Of someone's NBA career. Yeah. And 2, there's a real myth around like someone who can be a quote difference maker now for a team, and rookies never are. Like they never are. Like rookies aren't good. Like even the best rookies like are not good until their second, maybe like best case scenario, usually 3rd year. So again, like I don't think This
has nothing to do with Collin Murray Boyle. Like that, like I'm sure he's a great prospect. Like this is nothing to do with him specifically. I'm just looking at the whole team and being like, what is this team?
I don't know. This is Cathryn. I hate to say, like, this is the team. I think this is the team. This is a team they've chosen.
I feel like I'm going through stages of grief, and you're trying to get me to acceptance before the end of this pod.
No, you gotta go through it yourself. That's what this off season is for.
But remember, like, okay, a few seasons back, we were trying the whole, Vision 6-9 thing. We were struggling, blah, blah, blah. And then everyone was like, they're going to blow up this team, or they're going to blow up this team, at the trade deadline. And then we trade Haliburton for a future first. And everyone was like, what the hell is this? We needed Haliburton. We needed a real starting NBA center.
And he's back. This team. He's back, baby. And
now everyone loves
Haliburton. Give up.
We needed a starting center, a proper NBA center. That is literally what the team was missing. They finally got one. Centers are not easy to get. And I feel like, people forget that. I think people forget that. We were in like Siakam's a 5 now and blah, blah, blah. And we weren't winning games because he needs to be a 4. Right. So I'm just not about that life, Katie. I don't even know what to tell you. It'll be a long season on this podcast. If this roster stays the same. Not that I don't look at RJ Barrett or anything and think like, oh, he has to go. Like I'm not like that necessarily. It's just it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to other NBA great minds who analyze this game. I just feel like we can't be done.
I think they're probably done. Like this is a bad because this is the last year before the new CBA, right? I
hate this new CBA. It's garbage.
Yeah, but this is this free agent market specifically is quite a bad one, right? And not a lot of teams are in a good position in terms of the aprons and money and and the Raptors aren't. So it would have to be through trade. So yeah, you're floating RJ. Are you floating even someone like Scottie if you're trying to land someone huge? But a lot of these trades have already started to happen throughout the playoffs, It's just not the best summer to do a kind of big deal. Obviously I could be and may very well be wrong, but I feel like they're looking down their line at what they got and they're like, this seems fine. I don't know that that's right, but that's what they should be doing. But then again, it doesn't, the last 4 years, it doesn't seem to matter.
So I believe it was the end of the Tampa season, if I recall correctly. Masai had, his end of season press conference, and they kind of talked about the somewhat blatant tanking that happened at the end of that season. And they talked about the play-in, and I'm pretty sure this was the year that Masai said play-in for what?
For what? Yeah.
Play-in for what? And ironically enough, it feels like ever since we've been, well, except for the 1 year we lost to the first round against Philly, we've either been a play-in or a borderline play-in team since.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree with that. But then I would say since the Tampa season, they're actually I would say until this past season, there was no direction for the team, right?
Yeah, it's just been a really confusing time. Yeah. And I love Masai. I still believe he's one of the more competent people in his position in this league. I look around the league and I still think it could be worse. It could be a whole lot worse, but it is confusing and frustrating where it's I'm not pro tanking, but at least what you're kind of in for, just from a fan perspective, right? But to spend this many years just sort of stuck in the middle, then you become like an Atlanta, a Chicago Bulls, and I'm sure the fan bases of all these teams are just frustrated looking around what's going on, and this isn't necessarily the most fun place to be. So I don't know. I really hope that we're not completely done making moves. Not that I necessarily want to see people go or at the very least see greater player development and see some of these players really take like a leap forward next year. That would make nothing would make me happier than that. I mean, I don't know what their off seasons have been like so far. I remember after Scotty's rookie season, you know, he was just like messing around, making a bunch of TV commercials, wasn't really working on his game, had a bit of a sophomore slump, you know, came back, his third year was better. I just hope like all these young guys, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ, like all these guys are having like very productive off seasons. Cause I miss that about our team. I miss like seeing like a Siakam pop off or a Fred or a Norm Powell, you know, I want to kind of go back to like when our culture was in that place. Can I get off my soapbox now?
Yeah,
Is that like,
yeah, you can.
Good God. Bonus Raptors Homer Moment filled with existential crisis. Oh, okay. Real Raptors Homer Moment now? We don't need to talk about the Durant trade. It's a lateral move. It's stupid. Okay. Like literally my whole take on it. It's a lateral move.
I'm just like, what happened in Phoenix? That's all. Just like, what happened?
See, they're in a worse place.
Were there really fistfights in the locker room? And if so, between who?
Interesting.
Like, I can't picture.
And also, if that happened, why would Durant be like? Why would Durant veto a midseason trade if it?
Well, it wasn't Durant. I don't think it's like Durant getting into a fist fight. No. And it's like also not Booker. I've seen his Instagram in the summer. He's just riding ATVs through the forest with his dog, and just like stand up paddleboarding on like these beautiful bucolic like rivers. Yeah, he's chilling, you know.
Yeah.
You ever heard that guy talk? Like he's chilling. Like that's kind of was the problem with the team. He's chilling like 200% of the time. So I don't know. Like to hear that things were so volatile is quite surprising to me. You know, and I feel a little bit actually. I will say for our boy Dylan Brooks.
You feel for him?
Yeah, I liked his fit in Houston. I
did too.
They're trying to be bullies. Okay, but he gets to do that there. So I don't know. I feel a bit sad for him.
I don't know if I feel sad for Dylan Brooks. I kind of feel more sad for the Phoenix Suns fans because it's like you were in the finals, like you were right there, and then it spiraled out of control, like roster wise and otherwise, so quickly, and it's just a shame that they didn't have another real like shot at it.
Yeah.
And then who knows how long it takes to build that. Because like for us, like, you know, Kawhi didn't come back, but I had so much fun watching that run it back Raptors team.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's a perspective that the rest of the league doesn't have. And maybe like there are some Phoenix fans who had that I maybe don't have insight on, but like that season was so fun, but then once we lost like Gasol and Ibaka, it was really over.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I'm just like this like pre-cursed OKC team who everybody has to run through Houston. Now Durant's like the last one. You know?
What do you mean?
Like Russ,
James Harden. How they have all ended up on the Houston Rockets. Did you see that Kevin Durant has had like the full rainbow spectrum of jerseys now in his career?
But that's beautiful. Happy Pride. So topical.
I mean, happy Pride anyways, everyone. Yeah. But yes, happy Pride.
Thanks, Durant. Yeah. Thank you. That's really thoughtful. That's so nice.
Okay, let's talk about our newest Raptor here. Let's get into our official Raptors Homer Moment here. Let's talk about Collin Murray Boyle's more officially CMB, our number 9 pick. When he was announced, we got to talk about this. When he was announced, he stood up, shook his head no, did up the button of his jacket, and then dropped an F-bomb, then hugged his mom.
Yeah.
And so then that clip, it was a bad look. Like there's no other way to put it. It was a bad look. Started going viral. Everyone was like, oh, hell no. Get rid of this guy. The Raptors social media page posted a photo of him smiling. They're like, see guys, he's happy.
That
And
was
we're
pretty
like,
good.
what is this? Like it almost made it worse somehow. And then he explained, and he actually said this immediately after being drafted when he was interviewed by Monica McNutt. It wasn't even like after the fact. He probably didn't even know there was any sort of reaction at this point. He just said it was a surreal moment, and
WTF moment, he said.
Yeah, he was just kind of like, in shock by the whole sort of scenario. I do believe that to be true. I do believe that his reaction was more about being in shock than otherwise, but it was a whole moment for our entire fan base. Frankly, myself included. I'm not going to pretend I didn't have a reaction to this. I was very like, screw this guy. Oh my God. I think too, we have a lot of anti, Toronto stuff as Raptors fans in the air in recent months. There's been a lot of anti-Canada, anti-American stuff. So I think people have just generally been on edge with this. And then to see that it just set everyone off, myself included. Okay. I was in my feelings with you all. I'm not sitting here better than anyone else. But then I wasn't watching the draft live. I watched it after. So when I saw it when I was watching it, instead of just watching the social media clip, it all kind of made more sense to me. But yeah, look, they're going to take this guy to the Real Jerk or something, just like a real Toronto staple of a restaurant. And then they'll take him to Carabana, and maybe he'll be there with Grady Dick, everyone's favorite Carabana Raptor now. I don't know. I just made that up. But and then he'll be like, yeah, Toronto's amazing. And maybe he'll say that enough to satisfy us all. But very interesting way to get introduced to the guy nonetheless.
After we just talked so long about not having an inferiority complex anymore, Cathryn, come on.
Look, we are products of our environment, okay? I'm not saying I'm not a product of my environment. I'm just self-aware that I know we need to move forward. But sometimes that's not easy.
I think the stage was a little bit too big for it to be a fuck dropped in the way that people think. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because the camera's like right there,
and his mom is there,
so big,
and he's at the fancy table. Like you're going in the top 10. Like it's just not. I think to me it seems like a slip in a good way, where you're just like you're not aware of what you're saying. You're either like really in your body or like out of your own head, kind of in a moment like that. I think if like I don't know anything he could have like uttered. Right.
Yeah, I mean, like in all fairness, it is the complete opposite to the way Scotty Barnes reacted. Yeah. Right. Scotty Barnes like jumped out of his seat, was like high-fiving people. The man had a turtleneck on in June. You're like, he's gonna do fine in the winter here. Like, it was like he was just like so excited. And maybe it was because also too we like jumped up in like his perspective standings, right? Like Jalen Suggs was,
yes,
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, still like it.
They uncovered a photo of this guy in a Raptors t-shirt when he was a teenager.
That's right. I have seen that.
They've done a dig. They found it.
I'm sure they found were like, please
anything that you have Raptors related. Yeah.
It's not a real. It's a photo. They fucking photoshopped the t-shirt.
You think it
was a Grizzlies t-shirt. Could you imagine?
No, I just think it's like, I don't know. And you know what? If he did do that, so what? Like also
no, he didn't.
I don't think he did
saying F about
but if he did,
he wasn't.
So what? Look what happened to Ace Bailey. Right? Look what happened. Mean? He was drafted. He specifically was like, I want to end up. He canceled all his workouts. He didn't go meet any team. He was like, I want to end up on a team. He's trying to, told these teams between quote Atlanta and New York. So like, think of all those teams in the top 5. It was like Philly, the Nets, Atlanta. and the Hornets, who he wanted to go be drafted by, and then you end up getting drafted to the Jazz, and he looked like he was going to cry. So it's like there's spectrum. I'm sure there is like some level of disappointment.
I knew he didn't work out with teams, but I didn't realize it was because he only wanted to go to certain places.
Yeah. I mean, and this happens in the draft. Like this does happen, and it's something that doesn't really get talked about. It's something that's probably going to happen a lot more. Is like you've got kids coming out of college who are much more sophisticated, have been getting a ton of NIL money, have probably been represented by bigger time agents for a long time. So like that kind of stuff is going to happen more and more.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
actually
already
like
millionaires. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm kind of on side of like a genuine reaction, and good or bad, it's like cool. Well, you have to come and play here, and like you're gonna have to get a feel for the city if you don't want to be miserable. And the team, we know this, like as you said, the team does a very good job of taking people out when they come to the city, whether they're rookies or new signings or vets, and they get them comfortable. They want to get them acclimatized, and because that goes a really long way. Because then people talk. The league is very small, right? So like. I don't think he did, but if he did in the way that people were in their feelings about, okay, give him like a month in Toronto summer. The best time to be in Toronto.
True.
I'm sure he will feel fine. He's also on a team with like other very young guys. He's not going to like a very old team who's like,
that's true.
They're all going to go to Cactus Club together. He's got a Cactus Club crew.
What's up with Cactus Club? Why does everyone like Cactus Club?
We got to find one better.
It's such a like basic place.
It is a basic place, but they're also teenagers and they don't know any better.
I mean, I went to, whatever, Jack Astor's or whatever, but I lived in Mississauga. It's different.
Yeah, there's just it's too early to get too mad.
Yeah. You're correct. And
Thanks.
Just because feelings aren't meant to be correct or incorrect, you know what I mean? Sometimes you're just in your feelings. I was in my feelings. I went through the whole 180. Now I feel like I like the kid. I want to give him a chance.
Yeah.
And if he is, we talked about dropping the comps, but even if he is a Draymond Green type player, or, I think Lou Dort is also like a Draymond Green type player where like he's, really good defender. He's a really good 3-and-D guy, but has maybe a bit more versatility than that. If he does become that type of player, I think that's great. I have no idea how it fits into the grand scheme of things. Maybe we just have to wait till late October to find out. But yeah, I am rooting for his success.
Yeah. Me too.
Okay, I have to pause real quick here. Okay, it is Hottie highlight of the week time. Katie, finally, the listeners don't have to just listen to me run off with one. We get a choice again. Okay, we get a choice. And it is, we're going to celebrate the NBA Finals with this one. It is between Pascal Siakam in his huddle, popping out his head with his eyes closed, but not closed, looking like he is channeling both angels and demons alike to get the win. Okay, really incredible moment. Or we have Shea celebrating at the parade, wearing the Canadian flag around his waist, but more specifically, his Instagram post, which is really next level. Okay. If you don't follow Shea,
his rap. Yeah. It's the longest rap yet.
If you don't follow Shea on Instagram, you should. He's a great follow. I'm going to read it. I'm not going to rap it, people. Just because I'm wearing a hat doesn't mean I rap now. I'm going to read it. It says, I spent the last few days thinking, and while I reflected, I accepted that half of the opinions on our trajectory were rooted in resentment. It was in front of your face all year, but you chose to neglect it. The more milestones we reached, the more people disrespected. They tried to say we were too young, hating on how we were connected, pretending our downfall every step of the way. And when we succeeded, they acted like it was expected. We ignored the noise. They said I was being nonchalant because I never would address it. Why would I shed light on rage bait and misdirection? I'd rather be the reason you stand corrected. Staring at the Larry O, my only competition is the man in the reflection. Buddy. Release a book of poetry, Shay.
Well, like the best thing about following Shay is he does little raps for all his captions.
All of
but they're
them.
usually like a line, 2 lines tops, I think.
Yeah.
This is a full track. So
this is a full track.
Yeah. This was a full track and it's good. They're also I don't know. I always like them. I want to talk to him about this.
You have to talk to him about this, Katie.
About his raps.
This is like, these are the kinds of things I actually want NBA reporters to talk to players about.
I know. No,
I mean, you can talk to them about like, oh, you had X number of rebounds in the second half. Tell me about that. Like, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But also like, where do your rapping lyrical poetry skills come from? How long
did it take you to write that? You write it in a notes app? Do you do
what inspired you to do this?
Yeah, exactly.
What's your history with this? Mm-hmm. Did you write this kind of stuff as a kid? Like,
yeah,
I'd love to know that. Oh my God, Katie, you got to travel to OKC, go to like, I don't know.
Or just Hamilton, right?
Or Hamilton, go to like a vinyl record store, go to one of Hamilton's many waterfalls. Oh, be so beautiful. Katie.
I like that like a waterfall has to factor into the story.
Hamilton has a lot of waterfalls.
I know. But like, I guess, yes, in terms of like taking some inspiration from nature.
Yes.
Okay, so do I have to pick?
You have to pick.
Okay. As much as so I heard someone asked Siakam about this in a presser.
Yes.
And his answer was so sweet. He was like, first he was like upset that they asked him, and then he was like kind of like, fine, look, like when I close my eyes, I sometimes think they're closed, but they're not. He's like, I don't know when my eyes are really closed. And he said it's because once his agent, he said during the national anthem, I always pray. So like, I'll close my eyes. And he said once his agent was like, what are you doing out there? After he thought he had his eyes closed during an anthem, he was like, are you okay? What happened to you? He's like, what are you talking about? And the same thing happened to him. His eyes were like rolled back into the back of his head. So now he says, for people who aren't watching and are just listening, he puts his fingers, like he puts his hands and basically like, you know, you like
physically closes his eyelids.
Make sure that his eyelids are shut. Just as like a safety. So, I mean, I love that detail. That's a gem. That's a gem. But like, look, I'm going to go with Shay. Sorry.
I think that's the right
one. I love the, you know, it's very cool right now. It's like very, fashion to wear a scarf kind of as like an accoutrement, like as a belt. Sure. Like a lot of women are doing this, or like a cover up kind of as a belt, like over pants, over a dress, whatever. I haven't tried it yet. I got some hot scarves ready to go, but I like that he did it with a flag. It looked good. It stayed there. I'm not like usually a very, I can't even think of the word for it.
Like you're not very like
patriotic.
Patriotic. Sorry.
I'm like,
I was like, you're stylish.
Thank you. But I'm like not a very patriotic person. And I saw the flag. I was like, yeah, like hell yeah.
Yeah.
It looked good. He was like lifting kids up, like throwing other people's kids in the air. The kids were like having the time of their life. It seemed like he went up to every child who was losing their mind at the barrier. I mean, it didn't seem like they had that many people to go up to. There weren't.
Not like the Toronto.
Yeah, let's just say it wasn't anywhere close to Toronto numbers. But no, he had a really good time. And then, as we've already talked about, I love his raps anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a full song. So
that was a full song,
and I'm just so happy for the dude. I'm really so happy for the dude.
I am too. And
it's like one of the good ones in the league, you know, all around.
Yeah, he is one of the good ones in the league. He always makes an effort to sign autographs and to say hi to people when they're there. And
he's good to he's like kind, he's nice to people, he's great to work with.
He deserves to be the face of the league.
He's a pro. Yes. And he's cool.
Cool.
He hasn't had to give one up for the other. You know what I mean? Like, which can sometimes happen.
He loves his wife. He loves his kid.
Yeah.
He's got swagger.
He loves
he literally has it all.
Yeah.
And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's the face of the league. and he's earned it.
Mhm.
Boom, mic drop.
That's it.
Let's end it there. Katie, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you everyone for listening and tuning in. Appreciate you so much. I should do this at the top, but I always remember at the end to please like and subscribe.
If you're still here,
Leave a positive review, leave a comment, let us know what you think about any of the topics we went over today. Katie, thank you so much for joining me. Let us know what you're up to and where people can find you on the internets.
You can find me at Basketball Feelings, basketballfeelings.com. I mentioned the podcast earlier, so there's some great guests, friends, colleagues, people in the biz, and where I am running the annual series called Exits, which is a look back at every team that was eliminated from the playoffs in the order that they're eliminated. And there have been some great guests thus far, guest writers and myself. And it's just a great way to pass these summer months, I tell you.
There you go. Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, everyone. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.